Okay, so let's keep talking about grasslands and look at what's going on with grasslands, what the challenges, the issues, and then what can we do to try to maintain as large of a percentage of grasslands on the Earth's surface as possible, taking into consideration most grasslands have been converted to agriculture. Can we bring some of them back from agriculture back to the grasslands? Get into that with prairie restoration. But again, 27% roughly of the Earth's surface covered by grasslands. There is a large biodiversity there, but unfortunately, most of it's been converted. So let's take a look at a local issue. What's going on in Illinois? The map on the left is a general map of what they say is the predicted native vegetation, because we don't have records going all the way back to the beginning of this country, pre-Native American establishment of the United States, to know truly what the grasslands were. But this is what we think Illinois looked like before Europeans reached Illinois and started to convert it. So we go, okay, we got lots of woodlands, especially in the southern part of the state and along the major river systems. And then we have prairie. We got large sections of prairie out there. And then we do have some savanna, so little drier areas. We get some marshlands, not a huge amount, but there's some little spots here and there, especially up near the Chicago area and a few in southern Illinois. And then some undeterminate. We don't know really what that Chicago area of Illinois looked like. Was there, what kind of vegetation was there prior to Europeans developing the city of Chicago? And then we do have obviously the water. So we go, okay, that's what we think it looked like. This is a 2012 map showing corn and soybean areas where they've planted. So you go, oh, cropland planted to corn and soybeans. So you start looking around the state and you go, well, there's a lot of that's been converted to cropland. Obviously, this upper section, no or minimal, if any, agriculture because that's mostly urban. But think about, let me get the pencil. Think about this portion of Illinois. Can't get too close to the river, but this big portion matches pretty much this shape of cropland that has been planted. And this is, recognize this is older. This is 2012 map. If we looked at a 2019 or 18, 19 or 20 or whatever map, it's probably going to look very, very similar. We're not seeing large changes in the the maps when we look at what's planted versus what is native. So we've pretty much wiped out all of our native vegetation, at least the native prairie. We do still have native forests, some little pockets here and there, not true large sections, but the grasslands by and large are gone. We do have restoration going on, restored grasslands, which is great, but most of the native stuff is gone. So things that also play a role in elimination of grasslands is when they're open, they're public domain, and they're overgrazed. This is more prevalent out west, not so much here in Illinois, but if we go out west, we see overgrazing happening on large parts of the grassland. Oh, so it's that tragedy of the commons. Open range, go graze it, ranchers overgraze, grasslands collapse. One strategy that has proven to be successful to decrease overgrazing issues is what they call rotational grazing. It takes time, it takes effort, but what it does is it improves the quality of your grasslands. I'll get to that in just a second. So let me touch base first on what happens with rotational or overgrazing. All right, so here with overgrazing, what we see happening is too many cattle, too many animals, sheep, whatever, that are grazing on land. and they abuse it. They overconsume the vegetation. And when it's just open like that, say, hey, let the animals graze wherever they want, the animals are going to be very selective, and they're going to selectively eat the best plants. So this is equivalent to saying, let's go to the buffet line and you pick out the stuff you like the best. You leave behind the junk, the crappy stuff. You don't eat the broccoli. You don't eat the cauliflower. You take the pizza. You take the things you like the best. That's what these animals do. So then that leaves behind weedy species that maybe they're the thorny ones, the ones that the animals don't like that much. And then that changes the producer base of the grasslands big time, because that's what's left. That's what grows back. That's what's not eaten. And now your grasslands are moving away from being a grassland because of the overgrazing. So as overgrazing happens, there's an increase in erosion. There's a decrease in water retention because you lose your root base, you lose your producers, you have a decrease in plant cover, and what this can do, wrong one, is this can eventually lead to desertification of the grassland. So desertification is when fertile land becomes desert. That's the problem. That's the concern. We see this happening more and more and more as grasslands are overgrazed. So rotational grazing can, I don't want to say eliminate this problem, but it can definitely decrease the severity of it. So with rotational grazing, what's going to happen here is you're going to move your animals on a timed interval. Now, that doesn't mean every 12 minutes. So you're going to put your animals in a small area, and you're going to fence them in, and you're going to keep them maybe on these 5 acres for 3 weeks. Then you rotate them to another 5 acres for 3 weeks, and then another 5 acres, and another 5 acres. So the best way to do rotational grazing, let's simplify it here. You divide your grassland up into 4 quadrants. You start them in quadrant 1 for 3 weeks. Then you move them to quadrant 2 for 3 weeks. Then to quadrant 3 for 3 weeks. And then to quadrant 4 for 3 weeks. This is, as you rotate through, this gives each quadrant 9 weeks to recover if you do it on 3-week intervals. And the intervals vary depending upon the grassland, the time of year, the animals that you're working with. So don't think 3 weeks is the magic number. But if you're here, the animals eat the entire buffet line. They're not going to just pick the best stuff. They're going to eat the junky stuff because they're hungry and that's all that is left after they've eaten the good stuff. When they get moved here, they're like, oh, great, let's eat the good stuff first. But once they've eaten the good stuff, then they have to eat the junky stuff. So it doesn't allow that junky, weedy, nasty stuff the opportunity to take over the range. And then you move them from spot 2 to 3 to 4, and you just keep cycling this rotation. But it does take more investment of time and energy by the rancher. You have to have the fencing, you have to go out, you have to monitor the animals, move them. It can maintain the health of a range or of this grassland much longer than just simply, hey, let the animals go out and graze over these 200 acres, and after 2 months, I'm going to bring my animals in for harvest. So we're trying to encourage more and more of this rotational grazing, but again, it's a difficult process to get people to move forward with. So when we look at the rangeland soil degradation, what's happened to it and why it's degraded. Globally, 65% of the world's rangeland soil has been degraded due to other causes. So we go, okay, you got climate change, you got salt salinity buildup, you have pollution, you have lots and lots and lots of factors contributing and creating a lot of problems. 35% of the world's rangeland soil has degraded because of overgrazing. Now, yes, that is smaller than the 65, but it's one cause that's led to 35% of the soil being degraded. There are dozens of causes contributing to the 65. So again, we got to go back to find the biggest cause of a problem, tackle that one first. If you can deal with overgrazing issues, you've improved 35% of the world's rangeland soils. Then you start tackling the other issues to improve another 5%, 10%, 8%, 6% as you tackle the issues that make up the 65%. So that's, again, something really to remember. Here, it's one bullet. Here, you may have dozens of bullets that are causing these problems. So to eliminate this one, okay, you've improved it by 3%. That's good. But this is a much better return over here if we can change perspectives on how to manage ranges and grasslands with rotational grazing. That'll have a much bigger impact. So, all right. So now we start thinking about, well, what's going on with parks and preserves. We take forests or grasslands and we put them into parks and preserves and we protect them. That's fantastic. It's great. It's positive. Roughly 12, about, I think the stats are like 11.6. We're just going to go about 12% of the Earth's land is in protected status. That's land. We're not talking about marine preserves or marine parks at this point. This is land. So like Yellowstone National Park, Shawnee National Forest in southern Illinois, all these national parks around the world, that's what we're doing to protect them. Sounds great. It is great. It's awesome. But what level of protection do they have? That depends upon the title that the park or preserve has. That kind of designates the level of protection and the level of use that can be done in that park. So when we look at the level of use, how much impact can we have on it? It varies from park to park to park or reserve, etc. So if you have something that's designated as an ecological reserve or something that's a wilderness area, there's little or no use of it. It's not commercialized. It's not a tourist area. It's nature kept for nature. Maybe research, but minimal, if any, use in there. National parks have a low level of use compared to others because we're trying to preserve it. So you go out to Yellowstone, awesome. You only get to see a small snapshot of that park. You drive the roads, you do the stuff where the Park Service says you can go. You can experience part of the national park, but the majority of the national park is off limits because we want to preserve it. We want to keep it protected. But there's more use to a national park than an ecological reserve. Now you go to natural monuments or archaeological sites. Here you have low to medium, I'm just going medium, use of these facilities. We want people to learn about it. We want people to study it. We want people to experience it. So there's going to be a bit more usage of these sites compared to national parks versus ecological reserves. So like Cahokia Mounds, go up to Emaquan. There's Dixon Mounds. A lot more use of those facilities. So we'll talk about more in our next lecture.